All right, what's up, Sanjar here. So today I've got something a little different, and what I'll be talking about today is pretty much exactly what I do for work. And if you've clicked on this video, then I assume that you already know who Iman Gadzhi is and what he does. So I won't cover his background, but look, there's this one video on Iman's channel that's different from the rest, and this video has more views than his other ones, and it also is longer than his other ones. And of course, that's no coincidence, right? And that's because this video is designed as a video sales letter. So it's a VSL that's designed to convert people onto his educational program, Agency Navigator. So what I'll be doing in this video is simply breaking down this VSL purely as a marketing and sales asset. I'll be explaining the rationale behind it and why it's so effective and has delivered such incredible results for him. So just to be clear, this isn't me exposing Iman as a guru or anything like that, which many are doing already. But rather, this is just me taking this sales asset in isolation and analyzing it purely from a marketing and sales standpoint as a discipline, right? So this is relevant to you if you're someone who's using VSLs throughout their funnel, right? If for your business perhaps, or this video is relevant for you if you're simply a copywriter looking to upskill, or if you're just someone that's curious and want to find out more about the marketing forces and human behaviors that are at play, and how marketers tap into that. So I've split this video into two parts, and we'll get to the watch along bit in a second, where I actually watched the VSL live with you and stopped throughout to provide my commentary as to how direct response tactics are used in the script. But before doing that, it's much more important to understand the underlying fundamentals of why the VSL is so effective in the first place. So it's only right that I touch on this first because I don't want you to be deceived into thinking that it's a particular combination of words or a particular script that really does the heavy lifting and converts people, right? What's much more important, and the thing that really drives 80% of the results, is not the script, but rather it's the underlying fundamentals. And the underlying fundamentals to sort of any sale are the following, and I'll be discussing these particularly through the lens of Iman to give some context to you as well. So the first underlying fundamental is the context of consumption, right? So context is extremely, extremely important for marketers, and I just see this one go so much under the radar. And to be honest, I can see why, because when you're creating particular marketing or sales assets, it's very easy to view it as sort of one asset that's then distributed to a bunch of different people, right? So it's very easy to see it through this cookie cutter approach, whereas in reality, it's completely the opposite. Everyone is on their own individual journey. They have their own individual context, and people only buy things that they feel are perfect for them at a particular point in time, at a particular place, and at a particular sort of stage of wanting to solve the problem, right? So it's very important to understand the context behind how your asset will be consumed, because that will tell you how you should speak to them, right? That will tell you the language that you should use in speaking to them and exactly what you should say. And this is the thing that enables resonance with your content, right? And this is what you want: resonance. It's that feeling of, this product is just for me, just at the right time, right? So this context of consumption can come from a variety of sources, right? And it's important to factor in all of these. So the first sort of pool of context is the customer journey and the relationship with the creator, right? So in Iman's case, he's actually grown a lot over the last 1.5 to 2 years or so. I think he's grown from like 150,000 subscribers all the way to 3.3 million, which is just ridiculous growth. And the way that he's done that is through podcast collaborations and also him going so ham on short form content, right? So the people that would have been the people that get to the VSL in the first place, right, they would have been exposed to Iman, because what he does is he redirects from his normal YouTube videos onto this VSL, right? So he'll know that this isn't the first time of his audience meeting them, right? And the key implication of this is that he can afford to do less sort of evidence signaling, right? Like, he doesn't need to position himself as an authority figure so much, because he knows that people would have been exposed to him being an authority throughout, right? Like, he just has so many sources of being an authority figure, be that in terms of social proof, be that in terms of the things that he's already mentioned in other videos, and so on. So because of this, the key sort of implication of understanding this context is that he knows he can afford to be less signaling about his authority in the video, which is very key to understand, because if you didn't, then you would otherwise spend this real estate of minutes on a YouTube video on a topic that you shouldn't even be discussing in the first place, right? When you could be talking about something else to do the heavy lifting in terms of converting, right? So that's the first bullet point of where the context of consumption is important. Now the second one is the target audience profile, right? So before scripting any kind of sales asset, you must understand who you're speaking to, right? Because only once you understand these guys can you actually structure your script in a way that resonates, and also use language that will also be resonant to them, right? So you want to, once you have this, really market research is 95% of the work, right? Like once you know exactly who you're speaking to, the copywriting is actually the easy part. Of course, there's some tactics to be applied, which we'll go through when we're watching the video, but the real key is the understanding and interface with your target audience, right? So he knows this very well, and he knows that what they're interested in is how to get to 10K a month, as quickly as possible, because the audience that he's catering to are people wanting to start making money online, right? So he knows that that's the thing that hooks them in, and he knows exactly which terms to use, as we'll see in the video in a second. Now, secondly, or rather thirdly, it's awareness level, right? So I won't, go through this in too much detail, but basically there's various stages of awareness for a prospect, right? First, and at the very top, is you as a potential customer being completely unaware. So you don't even know about a problem existing. You don't know that there's solutions that exist, and you don't know of brands that could serve these solutions. So you're just completely oblivious to this, right? Now, in Iman's case, leads are somewhere along the problem aware stage, right? So they know that they have a problem because it's quite hard to ignore the problem of, financial difficulty. So they know that they have a problem. Now what they're looking for is the correct solution, right? And this is exactly the reason why the VSL that Iman creates is solution centered, right? If, for example, the leads were actually ones that were unaware of the problem, then what Iman otherwise would have or should have done is created a VSL that, speaks less about the solution, but rather speaks more about actually identifying and defining the problem itself, so that people understand that this is what they need to solve, and then at the next stage, that's when they get served a solution. But in Iman's case, people know that they have a problem and they're looking for a solution, and this is exactly what the VSL serves them, as you'll see, with a sort of 7-step framework to starting a business, right? And lastly, is the sophistication level. So it's easy to confuse awareness and sophistication level, but the two are different. So awareness is how aware are you of a problem and then a solution to it, and then brands that could serve that solution. Whereas sophistication level is your sort of how sophisticated you are in understanding the problem, if that makes sense, right? So sophistication level is something that determines what kind of language you should be using in your sales assets in order for it to be understood by the audience, right? So for example, if your audience is very sophisticated, then you'll want to use very technical terms, because they would just think that the lack of technicality makes the asset valueless, right? Like it doesn't serve any actual value. However, if you have a less sophisticated audience, then you need to be serving less sophisticated language and structures of the video sales letter, because any sort of excessive use of technicalities and being extremely sort of pedantic and detailed about the solution, that would just cause chaos and overwhelm in the minds of the audience, right? So in Iman's case, the audience is relatively unsophisticated when it comes to business, right? Because the way that his funnel is that he hooks people in with short form content across, let's say, TikTok or Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts and things like that. And oftentimes at this level, he's not even talking about business, right? He's like just talking about lifestyle stuff, and people have been like captivated by him, and they go into his they step deeper into his funnel, and they see more videos about business and so on, and they start getting interested in productivity, self-improvement, things like that. And by the stage that they get to the VSL, they are unlikely to have a very good understanding of business, or not a very good understanding, or not a very good sophisticated level understanding of business. And so because of this, you'll see in the video that the way that Iman actually structures the VSL is very simple, and there's a lot of emphasis that he places on making sure that the step-by-step framework that he shares is as clear as possible and as easy to understand as possible without diving into the details. So the VSL is very well sculpted to fit the context of its consumption, and as we watch it, I'll be referring back to a lot of these points, so that's why I want to get them out of the way now. And then secondly, so the second underlying fundamental of why this VSL is so effective is because the basis for marketing and sales is so strong already, right? So the market that he's in is a huge market, right? Like everyone wants to unlock financial freedom, right? And then the offer that he's serving is the 10K a month offer, right? Like who wouldn't want to reach 10K a month? It's this sort of, it's this figure that's just been like coined in the online space, and the people are immediately drawn towards, right? And it's very key to understand that the offer is different to the underlying product or service, right? So the underlying product of what he's selling is the Agency Navigator program, which teaches you how to do outreach and service delivery and blah blah blah. But what people are ultimately interested in is how to get to 10K a month, right? Like the transformation in order to get to 10K a month, and that's why he leads with this in his VSL, as we'll see, because ultimately what people are interested in is the offer, right? And so that's sort of the first basis that really forms a strong foundation for him to be for the success of the VSL. Now, the second is the underlying mechanism, right? And so what you'll see is that the underlying mechanism of the agency model, because that's what he's promoting, the agency model is almost objectively one of the best beginner-friendly business models to start with, right? It requires very little startup capital. It capitalizes on the time richness of its founders, right? As most beginners are, they tend to be time rich, just not very knowledge rich or capital rich. It's sort of the case studies are there. Like it's a pretty established and proven model, right? That genuinely works well for beginners, and one that is fairly timeless as well, because people will always require services, right? So as good as the VSL is, what's really sort of empowering Iman and making this VSL as effective as possible is the underlying mechanism that he is using in the first place, which is the agency model. Because once you have this strong underlying mechanism, honestly, marketing it becomes way easier. And there's this saying that a mediocre salesman will sell way more of an exceptional product than an exceptional salesman will sell of a mediocre product, right? Because at the end of the day, marketing and sales, you can't flip people's beliefs upside down. And what really does the heavy lifting is whether people are actually interested in and believe in the underlying product, right? And so that's definitely the case with Iman, because the agency model is just so well aligned for that. So this does a lot of the heavy lifting. Now, secondly, it's the sales argument, and we'll see that the argument that he chooses is very smart to propose the agency model. And yeah, the argument as we go through it, it's very hard. It becomes almost objectively impossible to argue with, because the argument is so strong, right? And once you sort of accomplish that in your video sales letters, especially when you're targeting a sort of business interested audience who are very logic driven, it's very key to make a logically robust sales argument that people will just believe, right? You don't need these crazy copywriting tactics. What you need is just a very robust argument that doesn't have any real logical flaws, right? And that really compels people to buy, right? And lastly, it's evidence, and this is what he'll be showing a lot of throughout the video, specifically in terms of student success. And you'll notice that he doesn't provide evidence of his own success, and that's because of something that we touched on earlier, which is the context of consumption, because he knows that people would have seen him already, so he doesn't need to give his own personal evidence of being an authority figure, but rather he needs to give evidence that will inspire the confidence in people to believe that they could achieve success with this model themselves, right? So we'll see that as we progress through the video. And yeah, so these are the things that, form the underlying sort of fundamental layer beneath the actual words that are used, that's said, and all the crazy sort of video editing graphics that you'll see. And if these are strong fundamentally, then the actual script and the selling becomes way easier. And this is really the thing that is driving the majority of the results behind the VSL. So this is just to note that marketing is almost like a bonus to an already good product. So if you have a bad product, or if you're in a small market, then no level of marketing is really going to salvage your success, right? What you need to do is fix the underlying basis first, and then leverage marketing to accelerate your growth, right? So a strong basis is what makes marketing easy. So this is the 80-20 of why the VSL is so effective. And now that we've covered this, we can actually dive into watching the video. All right, I hope you've got the popcorn out. Let's get into it.
So listen, the rumors are true. There is a 7-step formula that, when applied correctly, gives you the highest chance of hitting.
All right, so straight away, 7-step formula, right? Touching on what we were talking about, the unsophisticated audience. An unsophisticated audience that doesn't have much interface with business tends to have a lot of limiting beliefs about starting a business. They think that it's complicated, they think that it's difficult, and more than anything, they don't have confidence, and not necessarily Iman, but the confidence in themselves to be able to benefit from building a business. And that's why here he leads with a simple 7-step framework, right? So the reason that he leads with this is because he wants to make this seem as clear and straightforward as possible.
$10,000 a month.
And $10,000 a month is the offer that he's proposing. Notice that he's not saying, the 7-step framework includes picking a niche and then finding clients and then delivering a service, because that's not necessarily the transformation that people are looking for, right? That's the vehicle, sure, but the transformation is what people are ultimately looking for. And this transformation is to get to 10K a month. And that's why he's leading with this. And this, in a way, also forms the reminder to the audience of their intent. Because if they drop off now, then, they're essentially burning their own chance to find out how they could make 10K a month.
And this is the fastest way to go from zero to a full-time income, because these 7 steps remove any guesswork from your decision-making process. They're going to go ahead and prevent...
Once again, removes any guesswork from your decision-making process. Just note in the first 16 seconds alone, notice how much emphasis was placed by Iman on ensuring that it's as clear and straightforward and sort of foolproof as possible. The 7-step formula, the no guessing, right? And this is because he knows that the key thing that he has to overcome, the key sort of false belief that he has to topple over, is people thinking that it's too complicated. And this is exactly why there is so much emphasis on this straight away, 16 seconds in only.
Prevent you from making the mistakes that lead most people to failure. So as long as you follow these 7 steps, you are pretty much guaranteed to make money. And as I run you through them, I'm going to prove to you why. So with no further ado, let's get into it. But let me let you in on a little secret. 95% of people who try to start a side hustle or try to start an online business fail before they even get going. And let me tell you why. They try to look at what guy...
Okay, so 95%, that's a polarization, right? Which builds intimacy with the viewer. So as soon as, I'm sure that you can resonate with this, but whenever you watch a video where someone brings up the statistic of like top 1%, or, I'm not like 99% of other people, a person always has the bias to assume that they are in this top 1%, right? And so this is something that he's using here with 95% to build intimacy with the viewer. and sort of get their own confidence up, but also polarize other people.
Guys like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are doing, and assume that those are the most profitable businesses there are. Starting an app, developing a software, building an online store. There's a very big flaw in this line of thinking, because these businesses at a global scale are profitable, yes, but it fails to consider that there's a very different fundamental difference between you and guys like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. They have unlimited cash.
Okay, so the angle that Iman could have taken here, right, is he could have started polarizing other business models like e-commerce or drop shipping or, high ticket sales perhaps, because these are the real sort of competitors versus the agency model in the online space. But I think, and I'm pretty sure that this was intentional, I think that the reason that he goes with Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk here is because they are much more known and sort of much more, the chances of people knowing about those is way higher than, other alternative online business models. And I think that the people that he's targeting here aren't the guys that are already in the online space, because I think this video is fairly recent, and I think he's aware of the fact that he would have already targeted and probably converted the guys that are in the online space already, because they would have known about it, right? So who he's really targeting here are the people that weren't involved in the online space at all, and these people wouldn't know about alternative business models like e-commerce and dropshipping and so on, right? But what they of course do know of is Tesla and Amazon, right? Because who doesn't? So this is the thing that he uses here, because he's going for a broader audience, and a broader audiences understand are aware of these two industry titans.
They're extremely business savvy, and they have unlimited access to the world's top talent. On the other end, you have no money to start, no business experience, and
just to add to that previous point, the reason that I know a lot of the audience is unsophisticated who's watching this video, and they're sort of very beginner in the online making money journey, is because recently Iman's top of funnel content. So if you look at his shorts, it's very much sort of lifestyle content, right? So he's trying to appeal to this wide, broad audience, almost like an influencer, or sort of the Logan Paul vlogger type, right? And he's actually started a vlogging channel recently as well, of course, on for a specific reason too. And then his YouTube content is around productivity and business and so on. And this is only sort of this is one of the few videos that actually dives into the specifics of business in so much detail, right? So he knows that the people who are watching this are unlikely to be sophisticated. And that's because the thing that brought them to this stage in the first place is probably his top of funnel content of, him across podcasts or interviews or something where he's not even discussing business, right? So these people wouldn't have much interface or sophistication.
Very little, but still some access to the world's top talent. Meaning, if you chose any of those business models, you would be making a very grave mistake. It's kind of like trying to run an ultramarathon when you can't even do a lap around a track. Quite frankly, you'd be choosing the completely wrong business model for your career stage. Although they may be profitable ventures when they're operating in the billions, when you first start off these models, they're big.
So remember how I was talking about sales argument? What he's saying so far genuinely makes sense, right? It's very, very hard to argue with. It's almost objectively true, right? And so for this reason, it's very, very important to first have an underlying mechanism that makes sense. And mechanism is different to the sales argument. Mechanism is, the agency that he's serving. And then the sales argument is simply about, exposing sort of the benefits and the positives of this mechanism whilst negating its downsides. And what he's saying so far is completely true, right? Like, you really can't argue with it.
Barely profitable, if profitable at all. So by choosing such models, you're literally setting yourself up for failure from day one. And that's exactly what 95% of people who are trying to make money do. And it's no wonder that most people fail and give up within the first few months. And in some cases, these people are left with thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars of debt by trying to start these difficult business models that involve investment or involve money to actually get it off the ground and develop a product or this or that. And then they're scarred and they're burnt and they kick themselves and they go, oh, Stupid me, how could I ever think that I could be an entrepreneur? How could I ever think that I could start an online business when they just started off on the wrong foot from day one? So if you want to be a part of that 95%, here's what you need to do. You have to pick a business model that plays to your strengths rather than the ones that highlight your weaknesses. And I think that we can all agree that.
All right, so let's digest those last 30 seconds and share what has just happened. So within the last 30 seconds, he's polarized alternative business models by saying that, you know, these aren't the businesses that you should be starting. He's also dealt with all of the limiting beliefs, because he's saying no wonder people fail, right? And this is just even 2 minutes, 28 seconds in, how much emphasis has already been placed on overcoming this limiting beliefs. And that's no coincidence, because he knows that this is the key domino they have to topple in order to inspire a sale, right? So in this last 30 seconds alone, he's polarized alternative business models. He's starting to dissolve that limiting belief. And then he's setting the stage for the agency model, right? Because he said that you should be picking a model that doesn't highlight your weaknesses. And all of these 3 points have been made just in the last 30 seconds alone, right? And this is what I call maximal density. So one of the very, very frequent questions that comes to scripting VSLs is, how long should a VSL be, right? And my answer to that is always, however long it needs to be, just ensure that it's maximal dense, right? And what I mean by maximal density is scripting the VSL and coming up with the structure for the VSL in a way that allows you to communicate as much as possible in as little as possible, right? Because ultimately what you're trying to do is leave an impact and shift beliefs. You're not trying to, you know, just have people watch a 48-minute video for the sake of watching a 48-minute video, right? So if you could, within this 48 minutes, pack in as much impact as possible, then that's going to have just simply tremendous benefits on the conversion rate of the VSL, right? So identify, if you're scripting VSLs yourself, identify what are those key dominoes that we have to topple in order to inspire sale, and then find a way to blend it all together in the most dense way so that people could be impacted by it in as little time as possible. Because naturally, you know, there's churn throughout the video of people dropping off for whatever reasons, right? So it's not that people are starting to have shorter attention spans. It's just that videos simply aren't engaging enough. And one of the ways to make it more engaging is through having videos that really sort of download a lot of information into the viewer, right?
The building rockets is not going to be the thing to take you from $0 to $10,000 a month. You know, majority of the go-to business models are just as bad as trying to build a rocket ship and send it into space as a beginner. Things like building an app. I know, I have 2 of them. Things like starting an e-commerce brand. Once again, I know because I have my own e-commerce brand. Developing a software. Once again, I speak from experience, so that's my main business agency flow. And in fact, I've even bought a few other software companies to roll into the portfolio.
All right, cool. So once again, bringing back the concept of maximal density, check out what he's done here. He's polarized the 3 alternative business models, right? Building an app, an e-com store, and a software, right? But he's also communicated that he owns these businesses, right? And so he's communicating that he's like subliminally, he's communicating that he has no real incentive to be lying to you because he owns these businesses, right? He would have an incentive to be lying if, for example, there was another guru preaching these models, but he's much more transparent here, and he says that he has these businesses, and you know, there's a reason that he's telling you to pick the agency model specifically, right? So, and once again, he's able to say this because he himself actually has these businesses, right? So that's yet another underlying fundamental that makes the script writing easier, because it allows the script writer to write something like this, right? And the underlying fundamental is Iman is genuinely a very established entrepreneur in the online space who's done a lot, right? And so if you're looking to, the best way to supercharge your marketing efficiency and the conversion rate is simply by being better, by building a better product, by being a better entrepreneur, by providing a better service, whatever it may be. Focus on the underlying fundamentals.
So just like building rockets, these businesses are very complex to get off the ground. They require top talent for product development and require a lot of cash to get started, way more than you would expect. So the number one main priority when starting a business is avoid the wrong business models for beginners. The question is, how do you tell the wrong ones from the right ones? Well, here is how you figure that out. I've put together a chart that will guide you through the process of picking your perfect business model. There's basically 3 parameters that you have to consider. The first one is initial investment. If you need to burn through cash in order to get your business off the ground, the risk of you losing all your savings and potentially even going into debt is just not worth it. It's simply too,
once again, simplification, right? 3 points.
Risky. Whereas if you have to invest $1,000 or maybe $2,000 to get the business off the ground, that is totally fine. That's what I call a calculated risk. Not being a beginner and thinking that, hey, I'm gonna plunge $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 into this business model, where I'm gonna ask my grandma for $100,000 loans and her life savings in order to roll the dice and potentially lose all my money. You need to understand that everything in life is an offense and defense. So right now, it's most important that you pick a business model where if you don't succeed for 3 months, for 6 months, for 9 months, maybe if you don't even succeed for a year, okay, maybe you've lost $500, $1,000, maybe $2,000. You haven't burned tens of thousands of dollars and gone into debt that can plague you for life. Instead, you need to pick the right business model for your career state.
So yeah, just to give you a quick preview, and because I want to make this point now, what Iman is about to do is he's about to pick the right business model using 3 criteria, right? And so he started with this first criteria, and as he progresses, he will, based on these criteria, polarize opposing business models, because you don't want to be starting with one that requires a lot of investment. So this polarizes alternative business model. It tells you, it genuinely sort of brings you value in terms of how do you actually pick the right business model. And lastly, it sets the stage for explaining the agency model, right? Because one of the sort of key parameters of the agency model is that it doesn't require startup capital. And this, once again, is, it's no coincidence that he's chosen this approach, because he knows that the audience that he's speaking to is unsophisticated, right? And so he knows that one of the key things that this video needs to cover is to actually explain the agency business model, right? So the way that he could explain that is simply by saying, you do this and then you do that and then you do that. But rather, he starts off through a different angle where he teaches you how to pick the right business model. And then in doing so, he's polarizing other models, yet explaining the agency model at the same time, because he's showing that you don't need a lot of startup capital, and you'll see the points that he mentions later. So once again, this is what I mean by maximal density. You need to find the right path to explaining your sales argument so that you could do it in the most dense way possible and convey as much information as possible.
And the business model that you pick now is not the same business model that eventually, if you want to make $10 million a year or $30 million a year, or you want to sell your company for $300 million, they're going to be two very different.
And this is very key for him to include specifically at this point, because he's just touched on how he has other businesses, right? So as soon as a person watches and sees, but Iman is running other businesses, and I think that he no longer actually runs his agency as well. So yeah, if a prospect is watching and thinking, so why is he telling me about the agency model when he has other businesses? The immediate objection that pops up is, this objection. And so Iman needs to deal with that. And the way he does that is by saying, you need to pick the appropriate business models at the appropriate stage of your life, right? And so this is something that does genuinely make sense, and he needs to make sure that he does mention that to resolve that objection.
And businesses, but that's okay, that's fine. Let's focus on the next step. Let's focus on getting you to $10,000 a month, because that's really, and I can speak from experience, having made tens of millions of dollars very soon in the next 12 months, crossing 9 figures. I can tell you that making 10K a month was the biggest life change I have ever had. Most people don't realize how much money just goes into starting some of these more difficult businesses that a lot of people
So this is just, what you were saying now is just a bit of future state painting, and yeah, it's important to sort of include these throughout the video to remind people why they're watching this in the first place.
For example, majority of dropshipping stores, in order to find one successful product, they have to test 20 or 30 different products, and you're going to spend no less than $10,000 in order to make that happen. I speak from experience. My first business that I ran for 6 years, which was an agency, we had some of the most successful dropshipping stores in the world. These are businesses that were doing $40-50 million a year in revenue. And that sounds amazing until you realize that we were testing 5 to 10 new products a day. And of that $50 million, the profit margin was 5%. They had tens and tens of employees, and it was a whole operation. And then you look at something like developing an app or software. Once again, I speak from experience. I have multiple software companies and apps.
Once again, the fact that he's able to speak about these things from experience, that fact alone makes the VSL writing so much easier. It gives more ammunition to the script writer. So focus on the underlying fundamentals.
And my main business, Agency Flow, I did not take investors. I plunged over $1 million of my own money before I even ever saw a penny back from it, just to develop the software as well as the application. So when you're first starting out, you do not want to be in a position where every single day you see your bank balance going.
Once again, maximal density, he's explaining what characteristic the right business model should have. And he does that by polarizing other business models.
Down and down and down without even light at the end of the tunnel of when you're going to make that money back. And unfortunately, that is the nature of businesses that require a product to sell. Product development requires an abundance of time.
Okay, so notice how the music slowed down there and the sound effects sort of were silenced. And that's because the require a product to sell moment was this epiphany moment for the audience, right?
And cash to burn. And that leads directly into our second parameter, which is product development. When you're first starting out, you want to avoid businesses that require product development for all the reasons that I just mentioned. Now you might be asking, what type of business doesn't require a product to sell? Because if you sell a product, then obviously you need to start off by going through product development. And that's why I always personally suggest starting by offering services. Services don't require you to spend any money on product development, because you are the product in a sense. You're selling your time, your effort, or your knowledge. So you get to skip the entire product development stage. And if you're thinking, but I don't have any knowledge to offer, don't worry, because that's not a problem either. Because in step 7,
okay, so he's getting closer to explaining the agency business model. He's saying that you don't need to sell a product, you need to offer a service. And straight away, as soon as he says that, what's the objection that pops up in the mind of the prospect? It's, but I don't know what service, like I'm not good at anything, right? And this is why Iman clears that straight away by saying, don't worry, that's not a problem, because in step 7, I'm going to show you how not to deliver the service, and do that by leveraging something called contract arbitrage.
I'm going to show you how to actually get someone to deliver the services for you by using something I call contractor arbitrage. And you get to do all of that without putting any of your own money down. And here's the real beauty of selling services rather than selling products. The guy that's building an app or starting an e-commerce store, for example, has to deal with product development, shipping, logistics, suppliers, margins, marketing, selling, customer service, supply chains, payment processes, all of that, while over here, there's a guy that all he does to make the same profit is just write some emails for some e-commerce stores, or creating content for e-commerce stores, or finding influencers for e-commerce stores.
Okay, so just a note on how the delivery of this was. When he was talking about what are the things that an e-commerce store requires, he was, very quickly sort of rambling his way through that, of course, to give the impression that there's just so many balls that you're juggling, right? Whereas when it comes to agency, it's just a couple of things, it's just writing some emails, finding influencers. So what he's saying is not necessarily true. He's just looking at it through a selective lens, right? So and this is what you'll find a lot of sales assets do. They sort of very conveniently neglect certain parts of an argument whilst highlighting other parts of the other beneficial parts of the argument, like he is here. Because, he's saying all you have to do is write some emails, right? Like he's not talking about, in a similar way that he was talking about the e-commerce stores here, he's not talking about the fact that you have to find clients, right? So, this is just a way to create that contrast. And once again, because he's speaking to an unsophisticated audience, this is something that, exudes that feeling of simplicity, of clarity, of the prospect being able to generate the confidence in themselves to be able to run a business like that.
The point is that this person doesn't need to focus on 15 different components of the business. They can simply focus on the service that they're offering and making sure that they offer it to multiple different clients, which makes the business a lot easier because you just implement and copy paste the same systems from client to client to client. And a lot of times the agencies actually make more profit than the clients that they're even selling their services to. They don't make more revenue, but they make more profit. And at the end of the day, profit and having a cash flow business is the only thing that's important. Now, why is this? Well, it's because of the third parameter, which is quantity. You see, when you're selling products, you need to sell hundreds to upwards of thousands of them, depending on the price point.
Another thing that I haven't mentioned yet, by the way, is just let's pay a tribute to the editor, because this video is really well edited. And to be honest, I used to be part of the camp that thought that editing is just cosmetics and really it's not that important. But I have had a shift in belief, because when you think about it, if inevitably throughout the video, especially for a 48-minute video like this one, there will be churn throughout the video, right? So 100% of the audience starts, but only, let's say, 10% of the audience actually finish the video, right? And so what editing allows is it allows greater retention through the video, right? And if you have the same underlying script, right? So exactly the same sales argument, exactly the same offer and so on, but have an unedited video versus an edited video, they may have the same conversion rates, but the fact that more of the audience alone gets to the end of the video, let's say that, for an unedited video, the retention rate is, let's say, like 5%, and out of these 5%, 10% buy, right? Then if you have exactly the same conversion rate from people that get to the end of the video, and you're able to double the amount of people that get to the end of the video, then you can essentially double the number of people that actually buy your product. And so simply with editing, you can actually double the size of your business just because more people are getting to the end of your video. So this is something that I used to downplay, but now I'm starting to really realize the importance of.
Just to make $10,000 a month. And that requires a lot of skill and usually a large marketing budget as well. Now, when you're selling services, you don't need to be selling thousands of units a month. As long as you choose the right service, you can easily charge 4 figures a month, meaning you only need a handful of clients to get to that illustrious $10,000 a month mark.
Okay, once again, easily charge 4 figures a month. In reality, is it so easy? That's a subjective matter, and Iman makes use of this subjectivity to be able to say that.
The less units you have to sell, the easier it is to get there. And better yet, when selling services, you don't need to invest a penny in marketing. And that's because you can find clients organically, which will cost you $0. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in step 4.
No, but once again, everything that he's saying so far genuinely makes sense. And that's the importance of having a good sales argument, but even more so the importance of having a strong underlying mechanism, right? And in this case, he's just simply explaining the benefits of the agency model, right? And it's true, the benefits that he is saying is true. He wouldn't be able to say them for, let's say, a vending machine business or something like that, because they just don't exist. And so this is the real importance of the underlying fundamental factors. And once you have those in place, and if they are very strong, then you're in a much better position to actually make your sales arguments more robust, and then ultimately create better assets.
Before we get there, the next obvious question becomes, what service should we offer? Because services can literally be anything. Fixing a leaking pipe and giving a haircut, developing a web app, running ads, personal training. I mean, the possibilities are endless. However, some services are terrible options, whereas some will change your life forever, which leads us perfectly.
Okay, so once again, a very sort of simple and trivial example of maximal density. He could have said some services are terrible options than others, right? He could have just said that, but instead what he opts for is some services are terrible and others can change your life, right? So he's making the point whilst injecting that future state messaging
into the second step of this video. So step 2 is choose a profitable service. Now, to make it easy for you to tell what is a profitable service and what is not, I also put together another chart for this step. Here we have 5 parameters, and if you get these 5 parameters right, you will have a very profitable service to offer. So as we were just talking about, it all starts with price. I want you to be offering a service that allows you to command high ticket pricing. I recommend never going below $1,000 a month, but ideally something you can charge upwards of $2,500 a month for. With that, you only need 4 clients to get to $10,000 a month, which is very doable. Now you might be asking, what sort of service allows me to charge $2,500 a month for? Now,
Can't go without them.
in order to answer that question, I'm going to present to you a concept that I only teach in my flagship program, Agency Navigator. And it's called...
Okay, cool. So see what he's done there? He said, I'm about to teach you the concept that I only teach in my flagship program, Agency Navigator. So notice how we're already 9 minutes and 46 seconds into the video. So nearly 10 minutes, right? So that's a while, like a quarter of the video. And this is actually the first time that we hear about his program, right? So this is very important because most people going onto this video, especially the unsophisticated ones, they would have been, people that haven't been exposed to the make money online niche tend to have a lot of very negative preconceptions about anyone teaching you how to make money online, right? And so he knew that if he had any sort of indication at the start of the video of this being a video sales letter, then the drop-off rates would have absolutely plummeted, right? Which is why oftentimes I don't understand why people, testimonials are cool and everything, but I don't understand why people just absolutely bombard testimonials straight in the first second of the video, right? You're just telling that you're selling straight away. You're not providing any value up front, right? Like you're just saying, look, wow, these are the results that I've achieved. Watch this, without having provided any prior value, right? So what I personally prefer is more value-driven videos, especially in the sort of business niche, which is what people are looking for. And yeah, this is a sort of very, so going back to Iman, this is a very soft, gentle introduction of the Agency Navigator program. And it's not supported by any testimonials yet, because he's making the introduction very, very gently. And this is important because, if he hadn't done it, and left it towards the end of the video, then this would have been like a big shock for the audience, right? And they would have just felt betrayed by him, right? So, oh wow, I've spent this 48 minutes watching your video, and then you proceed to to tell me that this was actually a sales letter in disguise, right? It just destroys that trust, right? Whereas the introduction of the program gradually, and you'll see that it's the amount that he mentions about Agency Navigator and testimonials and things like that, it will progressively increase as well. And that's to make sure that there's as little shock involved at every stage. So here, for example, it's just a very gentle introduction, which which the viewer can't really object to. He's just saying that this is something that he teaches just in his flagship program.
Offer type. You see, when it comes to commanding high ticket prices, it's not so much about the service you're offering, but rather how you frame it. And let me explain what I mean by that. You see, your service could be simply writing. And in one case, you could be writing blog posts for businesses, and you'd normally be able to charge $50, maybe $100 per post in a very good scenario. That's because usually a blog doesn't have that much value for a business. It doesn't really generate sales majority of the time. So in that case, basically what you're selling is convenience. You're saving businesses time by them not having to write the post themselves. The problem is you can't charge much for that. Now you could be doing the exact same thing, but instead of writing blogs, you could be writing ads or emails. For the majority of businesses that sell online, these are their top sources of revenue. So if you want to write an ad or an email that performs well, you could literally double their sales overnight. And in this case, you're not offering...
Okay, so a couple of points here, or just two actually. Notice that he's genuinely providing value, right? So like he's not just shitting himself. He's not saying, well, look, I did this, I did that. But he's genuinely providing value. And this is especially important in the business opportunity niche because people tend to make, especially in this niche, people tend to make not emotional decisions, but rather logical decisions, logic-based decisions, right? And it's much easier to make logical decisions once you've been presented with value as to why this model is preferable, and you've gotten a sort of first taste of the value that you would get by enrolling onto this program. It's you can almost view this VSL as a bit of a Spotify free membership type of thing, right? Where he serves a bit of free value, and this is enough of an incentive for people to start questioning, what kind of value does he contain inside within his program? So yeah, a couple of things here. There's the direct response tactics of actually converting. But then also on the other hand, there's the pillar of genuinely offering value and using that as a first serve of the value that would be otherwise unlocked in the paid program itself.
In convenience, instead, you're offering ROI, return on investment. And the thing is, when there's a clear measurable return from your service, it is way easier to charge high ticket prices. You could struggle to sell blog posts for $50 a pop and instead just change your offer, change the way that you frame it, and sell email marketing or ad creation services for $2,000 a pop like this. At the end of the day,
Okay, so for $2,000 a pop like this, personally, I wouldn't have opted for such an approach because I think it's a very big part of VSLs and sales assets in general to make the transformation look easier than it is, and that's why you always see these sort of gurus or scammers also posting a bunch of content on Instagram of them flexing with their Lambos and things like that, and saying that they live such a cool lifestyle, barely doing any work. Why do they do that? Because they know that people don't want to work and they want things easy, right? And so they find that this is what's required to inspire the confidence in a person, because as I mentioned previously, a person needs to not only be confident in the product, but also be confident in themselves to be able to benefit from that, right? So what Iman is doing right here, he's inspiring confidence in the prospect themselves by saying things like, you can sell that like a pop like that, right? Which by my estimation, I personally wouldn't do something like that because I think it's a bit too far from how it is in reality. But nonetheless, this is sort of an insight for you as to why he did it that way, right? And nonetheless, I do utilize the same principles, just to a lesser of an extent, right? So when creating sales assets, of course, I do try to make the solution seem simple and well structured and straightforward, because that's ultimately key to inspire confidence in the prospect, right? But of course, there's different ways that you could inspire this confidence and different extents to which you can take it. And Iman has chosen this extent here.
Still doing the same thing, which is writing. Instead, all you're doing is changing the positioning, the framing of it. Basically, you went from a convenience offer to an ROI offer. And by the way, just to clarify, when I say return on investment, it doesn't always mean.
But nonetheless, he is actually serving value with this point, because not many people know what's the difference between a convenience offer and an ROI offer. So yeah.
In monetary. For example, if you're a designer, you could sell logos which have no measurable return out of them whatsoever, and everyone and their nephew are offering them. Or you could sell thumbnail designs for YouTubers. You're still doing the same thing, the same activity, graphic design work, but one is considered a commodity and the other is high impact. Even me in my position, I have 3 full-time thumbnail editors that get paid upwards of $3,000 a month just to edit thumbnails for me. All they do every single day is just re-edit old thumbnails and come up with new concepts and ideas. And that's because I know that a good thumbnail can literally double the views of my channel. And so does every other content creator out there. And content creators understand that if you double the views, that also means you double the channel revenue, you get more sponsors, and you sell more of whatever product it is that you're selling. So although there's no direct financial ROI,
so yeah, the example that Iman's chosen here is thumbnail design, which does suit this example very well, in contrasting the difference between logo design work and thumbnail design work, and how that's performance-based. But also the reason that he's chosen this is because it's a simpler service to explain than something like, back-end email marketing or, paid media ads or something like that. So yeah, there's a reason that he's chosen this. Just to ensure that the unsophisticated audience that he's speaking to is able to grasp this easily, and they view the transformation as an easy one, and of course he touches onto his personal experience of hiring thumbnail design editors, and that just adds a bit more credibility to the point, to show that Iman himself uses services like that. So do many others, right?
All right, there's still a very clear return for this activity, which again allows you to command higher prices for at the end of the day is essentially the same service. And it's also the type of service that no one else is offering, by the way. It is literally a blue ocean. Now, another very important factor to consider is work regimen. That is remote work versus in-person work. You see, in-person work would include services like plumbing, personal training, sports coaching, computer and phone repairing, etc. And although you can charge high ticket prices for some of these services, it's going to be very difficult to scale because you are limited geographically, meaning they require your personal time to fulfill and they limit your target market drastically since you're going to be attached to one location, all while sacrificing your location freedom. While working online, you can sell to people around the world, which is a target market of dozens of millions of businesses compared to just a few hundred when working in person. It's way easier to get clients and scale when working remotely. Plus, it provides you with location freedom from the get-go. Finally, we have recurrence, and that is offering a service that rather than selling and getting paid once, you sell once and get paid every single.
So just a reminder of where we're actually at in the script. This all started with him mentioning the 3 criteria based on which you should pick a business model, and notice that we're still in the journey of going through these criteria, and this is the path that he's chosen to explain the business model and also explain the agency model, and explain what types of characteristics your preferred business model should have. So once again, maximal density. He's doing 2 things. He's explaining based on which criteria you should pick a business model, and he's explaining how the agency model works in the first place, because an unsophisticated audience doesn't understand how an agency model works. So and confused prospects, they don't buy, and this is a very key piece of information for him to convey across this VSL. So he needs to make sure that people know the inner workings of the agency model.
A little month. And here is the beauty of that. For majority of businesses out there, it doesn't matter if they sell $1,000, $100,000, or even $1 million in a month. The next month, they start over from zero, a blank slate. Now, when you have a service with recurrence, if you sell $10,000 worth of services in a month, well, the next month you'll get paid $10,000 again, even if you make 0 new sales. And if the next month you sell another $10,000 worth of services, you'll now get paid $20,000 the month after. Instead of starting from 0 every single month, you're always building on top of what you did the months before, which also means that you only need 1 to 2 sales every single month in order to hit $10,000 a month within 3 to 6 months. And if you follow the step-by-step outreach method that I'm going to teach you in step 4 of this video, getting those...
Okay, so this little bit is, I'm pretty sure it would have been just included here as a little drop-off prevention safety net, because he's reminding of people why they're listening to this to hit that 10K a month figure. Because once you don't hear that mentioned for a while, then you kind of start to forget why you're here in the first place. And then secondly, he's also incentivizing people to hang around and wait until step 4.
Those 1 to 2 sales every month is only a matter of time by sending enough messages. This way you never need to rely on luck or anything else that's out of your control. So to sum it all up, a good service to choose is the one that allows you to have a price point of over $1,000, ideally up to $2,500 a month, has recurrency, is remote, and is an ROI offer. And here are just a few of the services that my students inside of Agency Navigator have implemented and used to consistently generate over $10,000 a month. Email marketing, thumbnail design agency, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, Google ads, conversion rate optimization, content creation, influencer marketing, short form content. And these are just a few of them. Usually any type of service.
All right, so see what he's done here. This is our second introduction of Agency Navigator into this video. And the way that he's done it here is very, very clever, because it's entirely natural and organic within the conversation that's being had. And yet again, it reminds people that they are watching this in mind that Iman runs a program called Agency Navigator. So this prevents that shock factor that would come later on. And the more sort of, it's him sort of moving closer by an inch to ensure that later people, they sort of don't freak out when he's asking them to buy his product. And yeah, the key insight here is to find a way to introduce elements that you want to convey in the most organic and natural way possible. And this method that he's chosen here has been great because it makes it seem entirely contextual to the conversation, and it makes it seem like he's saying this not because, he's sort of slowly promoting himself or like slowly building up the confidence for a person to buy, but he's saying this just as a, bullet point addition to his overall point, right?
That helps businesses get more customers, whether that's directly or indirectly, is a great one to pick. Again, if you don't know how to deliver any of these services, I'm going to show you how to do this in step 7 through contractor arbitrage. The fact is, countless businesses, both
yet again, retention drop-off prevention,
worldwide and the ones that are right next to you, are looking for ways to get more customers, and they're willing to pay top dollar in order to make it happen. I mean, just think about all of those stores. Every time you walk down the street, that have hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not even millions of dollars of products or even services sitting inside, and no one to sell them. And if you can help these people sell these products, well then for them, paying you $1,000 or $3,000 or heck, even $10,000 a month, it's chump change for them. And Sufyan,
okay, let's
living proof of that. He managed to sign a local business from his hometown in Germany for a one-time $15,000 euro fee plus a $2,500 a month retainer in just 1 month of using this business model. And the best part is the demand for such.
Okay, so a couple of things here. We'll touch on the testimonial in a second. But first, he was talking about how such an expense are, chump change for a business. And he's doing that to anchor the price that they're charging on the lower side so that people don't, perceive it as something too much to ask for, so that they have the confidence of, coming to businesses. And, this point really deals with the objection of how could I possibly convince someone to give me that amount? Like, why would they be prepared to pay me such an amount? His previous points were that you're driving revenue for them. And now he's sort of tackling this objection through another angle by saying that this is nothing for them because they just have so many expenses already. So that's something that is dealing with that objection of high ticket pricing. And then he mentions the testimonial. So this is the first testimonial that's mentioned in this video. And notice how it's only mentioned, pretty much nearly 16 minutes in. So, it's we've been into the video for a while now, and only now does it mention the testimonial. Most sales assets have it way earlier, and in some cases it's justified. But here, knowing the context of the customer journey and knowing the context of who we're speaking to, it's very important for Iman to not overwhelm the viewer with testimonials and things like that. That's why he just keeps it at 1, and that's why he has done it so late. And this is exactly why I was mentioning those underlying fundamental factors earlier, which is about understanding the context of who you're speaking to and what journey they've been on, right? And this understanding is what allows you to script such an effective VSL.
Services outweighs the amount of people there are to actually deliver it, meaning there's a gigantic gap.
Okay, so he's dealt with the objection of it being too much to ask for, right? One of the sort of knockoff objections that can arise in the minds of the audience is, well, surely so many people are capitalizing on this already. It's oversaturated, right? Like, the oversaturation is a very common objection. And he pretty much doesn't let this objection take its course and knocks it off straight away by saying that the demand far outweighs the supply.
App in the market, and the people who take advantage of this opportunity are inevitably going to do well. Now, before you go out there trying to offer these services to every single business, I need to give you a warning. Not every business can pay you $2,500 a month, whereas for some businesses, they don't even notice $2,500 a month on their expense sheet. That's why you have to be very specific and strategic on what niches that you choose. There's a few industries where signing a client for $10,000 a month is easy, whereas in some niches, you can barely even get them to pay you $300 a month. So you have to choose wisely.
Okay, so it's smart that he's included this here, because it allows him to build that trust, right? It allows him to say that, of course, you can't charge any business for such an amount. You have to pick wisely, right? And stick around to learn how you can pick these businesses to target wisely.
And that's exactly what I'm going to show you right now in step 3. So the next step is picking the right niche. So here's the thing, you've picked your business model, you've picked a profitable service, and just with that, you are ahead of 70% of people who even start this journey.
Okay, so this is was included to, we're 16 minutes, 30 seconds in, and by the time that the viewer has gotten to this stage, they are relatively committed, right? And so this is a point by Iman to encourage a continuation of their commitment and, to encourage a continuation of their commitment to ensure that they don't drop off, right? And one of the easiest ways to do that, of course, is by saying that you're 70% ahead of the people, right? Because if you view this as a journey that you've already started on, then it's a sort of gloomy return back to reality, where this journey doesn't exist, right? So, and the VSL itself, the way that the way that it's structured, right, is by taking you on a step-by-step journey. And so by the end of the video, a person feels like they've almost committed to this already. And yeah, once you feel like you've committed to something already, then payment for the course is simply, a natural step of the process to unlock the next path or unlock the next leg of your journey.
But there's still very important details that you must pay attention to. That's because even though you've chosen a profitable service, if you choose the wrong niche, you will still struggle to make money. That's why you must be selective about the niches that you work with. And once again, that's why I've created a cheat sheet that's going to remove any guesswork from your decision-making process on what niches you should and shouldn't select. Now, the first parameter is very simple, and that's revenue. Because if you pick a niche where clients usually have high revenue numbers, you'll make more money because they have the resources to pay you well. And if you pick a niche where clients can usually barely scrape by, you will struggle financially as well because they lack the resources to pay you. And from personal experience, the clients that pay the least are usually the ones that are the most headache to work with. So you might as well just go for the high paying ones. So let's put a number to it. I would not suggest working with any businesses that make less than $50,000 a month, because when a business surpasses that threshold, that's usually where they have the resources to reinvest, and they also find value in doing so. So here's a few types of businesses you want to avoid. First is startups, because they usually don't make any money and they try to bootstrap and cut costs as much as they can. It usually takes years for them to become profitable, and that's not an environment that you want to be in. And second is one-person businesses. They usually view themselves more as a self-employed individual than a business per se. And this also usually translates into their revenue numbers, which are usually way below the $50,000 mark I mentioned. The second parameter that you need to look at is profit margin. Some businesses do make a lot of money when talking about revenue, but when you look at their profit margins, well, then it tells a very different story.
So just know that, amongst all of the direct response tactics we've seen of him, talking about the desired future state of 10K a month, of, him saying that it's so easy and so on, he is actually offering value throughout. So yeah, this is something that helps build confidence in him. And it's very important to remember that you do need to lead with value. And this is, as Alex Hormozy says very often, share so much value so that people, don't even know what to expect behind the paywall. So this is the approach that he's taking here as well.
Ideally, you want to work with businesses that have 40% plus profit margins. Anything less than that, and you're going to run into the same.
And another sort of secondary consequence of sharing so much value is that you exude the impression of your prospect having committed to the journey. So if you can find a way to share value and put that into a roadmap, put that into a step-by-step journey, then that's a very effective way to do so. Once again, this is what we mean by maximal density, right? Give value, yet also do that in a way that lets the person know that they've embarked on the journey. One action, two outputs.
Problem as businesses with low revenue. And a few examples of classic low profit margin businesses are clothing stores, restaurants, apps, or retail stores. These are businesses that usually don't have a lot of spare cash laying around, and it usually takes them months to break even on the cost of acquiring a customer. So imagine if you bring a customer through your service, but that customer will only be profitable in month 4, 5, or 6. Well, that's a bit of a sticky situation to be in. You want to work with businesses that when you bring them a customer through your service, they profit straight away. That's why the third parameter to pay attention to here is their product ticket. And what I mean by that is their average price that a customer pays them per transaction. Ideally, you want to be working with businesses that have a product ticket higher than $1,000. And that's because with only a handful of sales, they are already profitable on your service. Let me give you a very simple example. Let's say you help law firms to get more clients, and you do that through whatever service you deliver in order to achieve that. And let's say you're charging them $2,000 a month, and their average client is worth $1,000 to them. If you bring them 5 clients a month, they're already making at the very least a 2x return on their investment, already discounting their margins. And trust me, getting them 5 new clients a month is a super easy job to execute.
So once again, he mentions the lawyer example, and the immediate objection that arises is, yeah, but it's so difficult to actually bring these clients. And he knocks that off straight away by saying this is a super easy job to do. It's up to you as to whether you want to involve that kind of messaging and inspiring the confidence in your prospect, and whether to what extent you want to balance that with the reality of the situation. But nonetheless, this is sort of the rationale behind why he's done so.
Is a very easy win client. Now, on the other hand, imagine that you were working with a chewing gum company and their product ticket is $5. So for them to get the same return on investment, you'd probably have to bring them anywhere from 2,000 to 10,000 customers per month, considering their low margins.
One more orders, we fund your Google shopping ads with our money. You only pay for results on.
I'm all right, thanks. Oh no, not this.
That, my friend, is an extremely hard job to do, and that client will hardly ever work out for you. So a few classic examples of good niches here would be law firms, pool installation, home renovation, pest control, solar energy. And now I also want to encourage you to add an extra parameter to your niche and think a little outside.
So yeah, he's starting to get people to think a bit. He's starting to get people excited. He's bringing up real use cases, and this is sort of that moment in the video where you start to think, oh wow, like you want to get creative and you want to get back to your desk as soon as possible to get hustling on this. So yeah, that's why he's doing it. And it's very important to sometimes, when making sales argument, it's easy to get stuck in the sort of abstract phase, and it's all a bit up in the air. So it's very useful to sometimes just cement and solidify the point by bringing it back down into reality, as he's done by sharing a bunch of niches here.
Outside the box. You see, the best clients I ever worked with at my agency were always very non-obvious and kind of quirky niches. For example, companies with weird products or services like amateur radios, power washers, container houses, custom jewelry, or companies with a lot of funding. And there are a few companies out there that truly don't care about results, but rather they just have to spend their marketing budget to please their investors. Or companies with lots of assets that make your job easier. Here's what I mean. Companies with big email lists, big audience on social media, a lot of organic traffic. All of these can be used to your advantage and make your job so much easier. All of these are easy win clients, and clients that pay very, very well. And now I'm going to show you where to find these clients and how to get them to pay you $1,000 to $10,000.
So yeah, once again, just to touch on that point, or elaborate on the point that I was making earlier about him kicking off a journey in the prospect's mind. This video has genuinely delivered value, and a person that has, come into this completely unsuspecting and completely uninformed, they will come away feeling like they've learned something new, and they will probably come away with enough information to sort of give this a go themselves, right? And now the rationale from a conversion perspective of why this works is because you're kicking off a journey that people you're kicking off the journey, right? And then that these people will inevitably face a roadblock to this journey, right? And your product is simply the way to clear this roadblock. And this is what he's trying to do here, where he's giving you just enough to sort of start to get your feet on the trail and get walking, but he knows that you will end up hitting a roadblock because he can't convey in 48 minutes what it takes to run a successful business.
A month for your service. So next step is how to get clients. You see, all businesses need clients. We know that. But the perk of a service-based business is that you only need a select handful of clients in order to make a full-time income with it, which means you have a big advantage. You can do things that are not scalable. Think about it. If you need hundreds or thousands of customers like online stores, apps, and courses do, investing in marketing is the only scalable way to acquire.
And just another reminder that all of what he's been saying so far genuinely does make sense. And this is the importance of having a strong underlying mechanism and sales argument. I'll keep banging on about it, but really no script can save a business, right? So focus on the fundamentals.
Are such clients. They can't be out here sending thousands of cold emails a week trying to sell their products through it. That would result in only a handful of new clients, people that know nothing about them, which is nearly not enough for what they sell, the price point and the margins. So it's not scalable for them to do, but for us, it doesn't matter. We'll gladly take those 5 to 10 customers because that is all we need in order to make $10,000 a month. So that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do now. I'm going to show you how to get your first client for free by using something called cold outreach. And here's the basic process of getting a client through cold outreach. Number one, you compile a list of potential clients. Then you reach out to people in this list, you jump on a Zoom call with them, and you sign them as a client on that Zoom call. It doesn't get simpler than that. And again, you're not going to be out here signing hundreds of new clients a week by doing this, but you can definitely get a handful a month. And that's all you need in order to be making $10,000 a month with your business.
Okay, so once again, the point that he is saying is true, but he does conveniently leave out the fact that the energy required to sign a high-ticket client, so the energy required to get someone to pay you, let's say $2,500 a month, is way, way higher than the energy required to get someone to give up $5, right? And so really with, scripting sales assets, there's plenty of different angles that you could take into making a particular argument, right? And based on what you're selling, it's like we tend to forget how malleable the sales argument actually is in order for it to fit what we are doing with a script, right? So in this case, he's he's molded the argument to conveniently forget the fact that the energy required to sign a high-ticket client is way greater than a $5 product, right? And this is the exact argument that someone, for example, in the e-commerce niche could use, right? So really, the possibilities are endless about in terms of coming up with a right angle to write your script from. And because of this, you see so many different models, right? But nonetheless, there is still that objective element about what is better versus what is worse. And the underlying mechanism is important.
This without ever putting any investment into it. Now, here's where most people fail in the process of getting clients with cold outreach. They just start prospecting, cold calling, cold emails, sending messages on Instagram without ever working on coming up with a high quality list of people to contact in the first place. You know what the number one denominator of success is when it comes to outreach efforts? Most people think it's about the script, the words they say in their outreach message. This only accounts for around 20% of your success when it comes to contacting potential clients. The other 80% is about who you choose to contact in the first place. You see, most people try to reach out to potential clients through cold email with an email list they got from some random website. Then when their response rate is terrible, they think it's because of the things that they're saying in their messages. Well, it's not. First, you need to figure out where are your ideal customers hanging out, and then you need to go there to talk to them. And I don't mean physically, by the way. Don't show up at their doorstep. Let's say, for example, you're trying to sell your services.
Okay, so this what he did right here was very, very, very sneaky, may I say. He laughs it off, right? So he laughs it off as a joke. Don't show up to their doorstep, by the way. Don't turn up at the front door. But really, this is a joke. This is an objection handle disguised as a joke. Because when he's talking about signing clients, naturally people tend to find it much more intimidating to sign them in person, have this conversation in person of, asking for money and showcasing the value that you could deliver. Whereas online, of course, it's less intimidating, right? And so the way that he handles this objection or this potential objection that arises from a person thinking, I need to actually go there and close them in person, is simply by laughing it off and saying, don't show up at the front doorstep. Right, so very sneaky.
The e-commerce brands. You know the best place to find them? Let's actually run through this exercise together. Open your Instagram and search for an influencer that teaches e-commerce. Let's say Ezra Firestone. Then you go on his followers list and start opening the profiles in there. Then just read their bios and you're going to find a bunch of e-commerce brand owners. Next, all you have to do is list them all and contact them, which I'll show you exactly how to do in 1 minute. And you can also do the same on Twitter by searching on the followers list of Shopify, for example. And you're gonna find tons and tons of brand owners there. And by the way, Facebook groups also works for this. Working on compiling a solid list of leads will make your life 10 times easier when you're doing outreach. So after you've compiled a list of potential clients, it's time to start reaching out. And now I'm gonna give you a bulletproof template, a bulletproof framework that you may need to tweak and change depending on your style and the way you speak. But I'm gonna give you a framework that's gonna help you book meetings with consistency if you stick with it. So it's composed of 5 parts. First, you simply say hi. Second, you give context and express a common value that led to you contacting them. Then you use this common value to pivot to an opportunity point. Then you take the pressure off of them, and then you show them that you can help them by actually helping them. And finally, you invite them to a meeting. So let's break down what this would look like in practice using the example of selling Facebook ads to an e-commerce brand owner. Step 1, say hi. So you go, hey Josh, how you doing? Step 2, you give some context and express some common value. I stumbled across your profile while reading one of Ezra Firestone's posts on Instagram, and I noticed that you like the same post. I love the guy. He has some solid plugins for increasing conversion rate on Shopify stores. This is very important because when a person receives a message and cold outreach, the first thing they're going to think of, they're going to have their guard up. They're going to think, well, how did this person actually find me? Which then allows you to move on to step 3, which is pivot to an opportunity point. Anyways, I was taking a look at your profile and I noticed that you have a brand that sells online, but I wasn't able to find any active ads running for your store. And this answers the very next obvious question, which is, why is this person contacting me? And bear in mind, whatever it is that they do, you can mix things up. Let's say, for example, this person was an author or this person was a very successful YouTuber. Well, then you could be like, hey, by the way, I looked on TikTok and you had one TikTok account, but I noticed that you haven't been creating multiple other TikTok accounts in order to spread your message farther. So whatever service you offer, you can find a reason of why you're contacting them. And that could either be because they're not doing something that could be making them money, or they're not doing it well enough and you can help them with that. And that leads on to step 4, which is take pressure off them. Saying something along the lines of, not sure if that's something you're currently working on or you just haven't had the time yet. You never want to point out
So yeah, as you can see, he's just genuinely sharing value, and you know, for a person who's completely new to the space and they're watching this, they're like, wow, it's so easy, and this is, especially for someone that just hasn't had any interface in business, they sort of get that epiphany moment of, oh damn, maybe business isn't this sort of whole world behind a steel blanket that is so concealed to me, right? And they start seeing what's going on behind the scenes, and they start to get a bit of confidence in themselves to make the jump and start a business. And of course, if they decide to, then it only makes sense for him to try with Iman, because he has a whole course that he'll pitch later on. And even if he decides not to, then chances are that he'll fail alone, and that's when he'll come back sort of crawling on his knees for the help of Agency Navigator.
Fault in someone's business without acknowledging that it's not their fault, in a sense, because people take that very personally. You don't want to come across as argumentative or in a wrong way, so you also want to sort of soften the blow of you noticing that there's something that they're not doing or could be doing better. And that's step 5, is show them how you can help them by actually helping them. So you go on to say something along the lines of, but I'm sure a few ads would help you increase your sales. So I've taken a look at what a few other brands in the space are doing, and I found these 2 ads that are working extremely well for them. And I actually record this quick video breaking them down for you. And here you send them a 3 to 5 minute video breaking down the ads or whatever relevant info you can provide them with based on your service. The thing here is, since you'll be prospecting people in the same niche, you only need to record one loom or one video, and you can use it with all potential clients. Record it as if it was for one specific person, but just make sure not to mention their name or brand so you can always use the same one. And you can find good ads by searching on the Facebook ads library for some ads that have been running for a few weeks. It really shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes to find them and record a quick 3-minute loom. And the next step is invite them to a meeting. If you think those could work for you, I have a few angles in mind that you'd be able to quickly record and put them to test within a few days. You down jumping on a call so I can walk you through them? And by the way, make sure you're sending each part of this script as a separate Instagram message so it looks more organic rather than one massive paragraph, because it just seems...
Yeah, I mean, I've been quiet for a while now, but really there's not much to comment on. He's just sharing his outreach step-by-step framework, and rightly so, because he's sharing value with the audience, and this is like, if people have gotten to this stage, then they're committed, right? So then the thing that will appeal to them is genuine value, and they're committed not out of curiosity of seeing what this video is about, but they're genuinely committed to finding out what it actually takes to start an agency business, right? And so the messaging that would resonate with these guys isn't Iman saying or isn't Iman clearing all of their limiting beliefs and things like that, because if they've gotten to this stage, then they've already sort of dissolved these limiting beliefs anyway. But rather, what kind of content would resonate with them is genuine value, and that's why he's going for this approach here.
It's a little too formal. They're gonna have their guard up a little quicker, and that's it. No need to overcomplicate things. Now here's what it takes to get to $10,000 a month with this process. Let's say you sourced a list of 60 people to reach out to, and it took you 2 hours to do that. That means that in total, it took you 2 minutes per profile. Then you consider the time you spent messaging these prospects. Let's say it took you a total of 4.5 hours to send all of these messages. Well, that means the average time per message sent was 3 minutes. So now you're at 5 minutes spent per contacted person in total, considering both steps. 2 minutes of finding the profile and 3 minutes of sending the messages. Obviously, you do these in bulk as separate activities, but when brought together, it's 5 minutes per potential client. Now you have to figure out how many messages you need to send in order to get a response. So let's say that for every 6 messages you send, you get 1 reply. 5 minutes to send a message times 6 messages, which means your total time per reply is 30 minutes. Now, how many replies do you need in order to get a meeting? Let's say you need 8 replies. Well, 30 minutes per reply times 8 replies equals 4 hours. So in total, you need 4 hours in order to secure a meeting. Now, how many meetings do you need in order to secure 1 client? Let's say you have to take 5 meetings to close 1, which means 4 hours to get a meeting times 5 meetings. That means that in total, you'd have to invest 20 hours to close your first paying clients. 20 hours. How does that sound to you? Investing 20 hours up front in order to get paid $500 to $2,000 a month every single month. And I personally think that's worth the effort.
There, for example, he's conveniently missing out client churn, right? Because that's very natural, especially with the agency business model. I know that if you have let's say a client retention rate of 6 months, then that is relatively impressive. So yeah, that's just one factor that he conveniently misses out on here. But that's because of the way that he's shaped the sales argument and the action that he's trying to elicit.
Right? Now, all the numbers I used here are very realistic. But let's say because this is the first time that you're doing this, it's gonna take a little bit of practice. You're gonna have to figure out the ropes, etc., etc. So let's double it. Let's say 40 hours to sign your first client.
Okay, so if the person had any kind of...
Is HelloFresh worth the price? Absolutely. I just love...
I'm so surprised that this video is monetized. Can't really explain it. But yeah, what was the point that I wanted to make? So yeah, if this person had any sort of any remaining doubts about the numbers used in this equation, right, and he was skeptical that Iman is maybe not saying the right thing, then these doubts would have definitely been sort of washed away by this confidence cushion that he's added of saying, let's double the number, right? Because if you double it, then how could you possibly, take more than the doubled amount of what Iman says it should typically take? So that's just something that Iman is saying to inspire further confidence in the prospect.
And now let's even go a step further. Let's say after you sign your first client, you dedicate 4 hours of your day to outreach and 3 hours of your day to service delivery. That's way more than you need for service delivery, by the way. Now, in case you don't have 3 hours for service delivery because you work a full-time job or study full-time, I'm going to show you how to get this done for you by someone else in step 7. This way you can get it down to only 2 hours per week.
Just a gentle retention hook there.
You have to spend on service delivery. But for now, let's call it 4 hours for outreach and 3 hours for service delivery. Then you manage to get your outreach time down to 20 hours, as in the first example I gave. In 5 working days, you are gonna sign your second client and do it for 1 more week, and you sign your third client and do it for 1 month.
So notice how over the last couple of minutes, there's been a lot of emphasis on numbers and logic and mathematics, right? And rightly so. And he's chosen to opt for this logic-driven approach rather than an emotional approach, because he knows that anyone who's listening is probably interested in business, and anyone who's interested in business just naturally tends to be more logic-driven, right? If this was another niche, perhaps something like I don't know, manifestation or something like that, then In those types of niches, you tend to see much more emotional driven copy doing better because people are there as a result of their emotions and you know how can you possibly explain manifestation through logic, right? I'm not dissing manifestation. I personally believe in that school of thought, but it's manifestation almost directly sort of counter opposes logic, so naturally you can't use that as a mechanism, right? So the method that he's chosen here is very logic driven, and that's because that's what appeals to the target audience
consistently, and you already have 4 clients paying you anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 per month, because now you also have more experience and have the confidence to charge more. So let's take the average between the two and say that your average retainer is now $2,000 per month. If you work for 60 days on this and manage to sign a new client every 12 days at $2,000, you will already be at $10,000 a month. And that's extrapolating by more than double than our original calculation of 5 days to close a client working 4 hours a day. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why this is the most simple, straightforward, and the least riskiest way to get to $10,000 a month. You put together a list of potential clients, you reach out to them, you book a meeting with the ones that reply, and you jump on a meeting and sign them as clients. And then you rinse and repeat until you get to $10,000 a month. And by the way, the process of getting to $100,000 a month is exactly the same. You just need more clients or at a higher monthly retainer. Now, to make this much in a regular job takes lots of qualifications, decades of work experience, and slave-like hours. But when you start a service-based business, or an agency as I call it, making $100K a year is the norm. Now, usually when my students get to this part of the process, their number one question is, well, how do I get paid? And quite frankly, this is the easiest part of the process, so let me show you how. All you need to do is create a Stripe account, and in case Stripe isn't available in your country, you can use other payment processors such as PayPal or Payoneer. Then all you have to do is connect Stripe to an invoicing software, for example, Simple Invoices, or I personally use Agency Flow. Now, I'm the founder of Agency Flow, so obviously I'm a little biased about it, but lets you send invoices, communicate with clients, track your outreach efforts, and basically everything you need to run an agency. But anyways, once you connect Stripe to the invoicing platform of your choice, all you have to do is this. Once you're on a Zoom meeting with your potential customer, you pitch them on your services. The majority of people get stuck here and overthink how much they should charge. My advice is just keep it stupid simple. Start with $1,000, then work your way up to $2,500 as you sign more clients. And inside of Agency Navigator, I teach you exactly how to structure performance-based billing models, which will make your client retainers go from $2,000 a month to $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month, $30,000 a month. And personally, my biggest retainer.
All right, cool. So yet another introduction of Agency Navigator, and this one has been much more thorough because we're getting towards the end and he feels like, there's more trust built up for him to afford to spend more time on Agency Navigator. And also we're getting closer to the conversion stage. So there needs to be more emphasis on the product that he's about to pitch.
That I ever had in my 6-year journey of running an agency was $46,000 in a single month build. And in fact, we've even had 2 students that have managed to surpass that mark. But that is a conversation for another day.
All right, cool. So this is a very, very sneaky testimonial, and very powerful as well, because not only is it a testimonial, which demonstrates that students are able to achieve results with the product, but it's also a testimonial that empowers confidence in the prospect that they can actually go on and do better than Iman, right? And this is the power of what he's teaching.
So when first starting out, keep it simple and just charge $1,000 a month. Then once you've pitched the service and your potential client has agreed to work with you, all you have to do is send them an online invoice with the invoicing software you've set up. Then they'll pay it, and voila, congratulations, you have your first paying client. Now, the only question we have left is how do you actually deliver the services? And that leads us directly into our last step. Now, have you ever stopped to look at how the biggest service-based companies actually operate? The ones with swanky offices with hundreds of employees. They have a very simple model. They pay their employees, let's say $10, $15 an hour, and then they charge their clients $50 an hour and simply pocket the difference. They simply figure out how much to charge your client based on the number of hours that the project will take and how much they're paying their employees, and then they're going to add an extra 100 to...
Okay, so what he's about to do is he's about to start explaining the service delivery, for which he leverages something called contractor arbitrage, right? And the way that that works is that you simply pay your contractor less than you're charging the client, right? And before making that introduction, one of the natural objections that may arise from that model is, oh, it looks like you're almost exploiting someone. Like, how could you possibly have that difference? Why wouldn't the client go directly to them, right? And this is why he presents this example, that this is pretty much how the entire services industry works, right? It's on this arbitrage. So he wants to, because what he's about to present, contractor arbitrage, is like a bit niche. It's a bit, it's a bit off the map. And the way that he can make it more normalized is by grounding it in a normal example, right? Which is how most service-based businesses, such as law firms, run. So this is why he brings this up first, and then he'll gently transition to contractor arbitrage.
300% markup on top of that. That is literally their entire business model. All these businesses you think are so smart and they're, they make tens of millions of dollars a year, and these law firms and this and that, that's their business model. That's it. Now what we do here is even smarter than that. Instead of having to deal with the risks that come with typical employment relationships, such as fixed payroll and long time frame contracts, we're going to hire a contractor who already has experience with the service they're offering. And we're going to do that on a per client basis. So what does this mean? Well, first, we won't have any risks on our end because we'll only pay our contractor once we've already been paid by the client. You see, the client pays you on day 1 and you pay the contractor on day 30, only after they have delivered the services. And that's a very common practice. Obviously, as even traditional employees, you get paid at the end of the month, but any sort of agencies or service providers, if you go to a web design agency or whatever, you're going to have to pay up front for the project to get started. It's funny, even at law firms, they pay their employees at the end of the month. But if you go to a law firm, you're going to have to pay a big chunk up front, basically as credit for the work that they're going to do for you. So this way, you won't ever have to pay anything out of pocket, and you only pay them once you get a client. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what I call contractor arbitrage. I mean, it's the exact same thing that Uber does. Think about it. Whenever a new driver registers to Uber, Uber is a company.
So yet another example, because he knows how important it is to normalize this concept, to show that this is, something that is very realistic and what the majority of the world actually runs on.
It doesn't have any added risk because this driver literally doesn't cost them any money, all while adding new potential revenue to them. And it's only after the driver generates such revenue that Uber pays their fee. It's a free cash flow for their company, and we are doing the exact same. This way, you're never going to run into cash flow issues, and you're never going to have to pay anything out of pocket. And the craziest part in all of this is that it's actually cheaper to hire an experienced contractor who speaks impeccable English from countries like South Africa.
Okay, so very, very key to include who speaks impeccable English, because what he's about to say is where these contractors are from, right? So he's preventing the objection. He's made sure that there is a sort of there is a clutch to ensure that the objection is prevented, because he's about to mention a bunch of third world countries, and the natural objection that would arise from that is, oh, but they don't speak any English. How would I be able to communicate with them?
New Zealand, Peru, Colombia, Brazil, Pakistan, Indonesia, Philippines, and a bunch of other countries than it is to hire someone who just graduated a marketing university in the US and has literally zero experience. And I mean, just to give you some context, my CMO at Grow Your Agency, Luis, well, he's from Brazil and he's been working with me for over 3 years at this point. And he used to be a contractor at my agency when we first started working together. I've hired literally hundreds of people from countries like Colombia, South Africa, Serbia, India.
Once again, drawing on personal experience to bring credibility to the argument. That's a very, very powerful way to empower your argument with credibility. And it's one thing is having a good argument, but all of that is wasted. All of the the strength of the argument is wasted if the credibility can be questioned. And that's why it's important to always sort of support your arguments with credibility. And one of the best ways to support it with credibility is by drawing from personal experience.
Yeah. And they're all extremely good at what they do. And here's how to structure these deals. The way that our students usually structure their deals with contractors is they pay them anywhere from $250 to $1,000.
The way that our students, right? He could have said the way that you can, but he opted to use students instead. Yet another reminder of the fact that this is a VSL and that the audience shouldn't be surprised when they get pitched about his educational program, especially now that we're getting closer to conversion.
Bucks per month per client. Then they charge these clients anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 a month. I mean, when me and my first contractor started working together all the way back in early 2018, he was charging me $600 per month per client. And I was actually selling these services for $3,500, $5,000, up to $10,000 a month. And actually, when I signed that client for $10,000 a month, I was like, okay, I think I should probably bring this person on full time. So I brought him on full time. His name was Danny, and he ended up working for me for many, many years as my CMO at the agency. Now, here's an example from our student Jamie, who signed a $7,000 deal that he outsourced for $1,200 while enjoying life on a freaking paradise island. And you can work this out depending on your retainers and the amount.
Okay, so now that we're getting a bit closer to conversion, there's another testimonial
Of work each client requires. I personally never suggest going below 60% margins in order to keep your agency very profitable. And the best part is you're making a real difference in the life of these contractors, because if they were working the same job in their own countries, they would work way more and make 5 to 10 times less when getting paid in their own country's currency.
Okay, so very, very key to include this, because, you know, he's dealt with the objection of, you know, the model being, the contractor arbitrage model being potentially alien and, you know, outlandish, and he's normalized that. Now he's explained the contractor arbitrage model, and one of the secondary objections that arises is, yeah, but am I not exploiting these people? Am I not exploiting the fact that they're just, you know, in lower purchasing power countries, and I'm just simply making money off the arbitrage and not doing any work? Well, he knows that this is a key objection to knock off, and this is why he includes this point, which is that you're making a real life transformation in the lives of the contractors that you're partnering with. You're making a real change in their life.
Of course, I was always very transparent with contractors of how much I was charging clients, and I suggest that you do the same. The next question is, how do you actually find contractors to work with you? You can look at a lot of different places like LinkedIn, Upwork, or other business-related and job listing social platforms, but by far my favorite place to find them is on Facebook groups. You can find Facebook groups closely related to topics of your service like Facebook ad buyers or SEO ninjas, and these places are crowded with good potential contractors. I mean, think about it, if someone is actively engaging Facebook groups in order to sharpen their skill sets, well, that's a very good sign. And I'll let you in on a little secret. The best types of groups with the highest quality of contractors available are the closed communities for softwares that teach you what you offer as a service. So groups for paid programs that teach Facebook ads or SEO or whatever your service is. And usually you can get your job listing posted in the groups by contacting one of the admins, because it's in their best interest to offer job opportunities to their customers and their students. So that's how you take it.
So once again, just sharing enough value to give the person the impression that they can go away and do this by themselves.
Advantage of contractor arbitrage to get all the service fulfillment taken care of by an experienced professional without having to do any of the work yourself. It is a truly beginner-friendly copy and paste business model. So now do you see why literally anyone can do this? And I mean anyone. Even guys like Benay, who's from Nepal and is already signing clients for his agency in his first few weeks with this business model. I mean, how awesome is it that this beginner-friendly...
See how now we're starting to roll into more testimonials, and that's because we're getting close to conversion, and we need to inspire. We need to showcase proof that this works. You know, not only works on Iman, but also other people. And this is especially important towards this end stage, because it's what inspires confidence in the prospect. Of course, this is something that he didn't do that much at the start of the video because of that point I mentioned of him wanting to make the audience unsuspecting and to prevent their drop-offs. But now that we're getting to the later stages, testimonials are very important.
A business model is allowing people to make 5 figures from the comfort of their own home, even in third world countries. I mean, it's nuts. So these 7 steps that I just delivered to you are the map to achieve financial freedom in this day and age. So if you could take just one thing out of this video, it's this. I always say that achieving financial freedom is kind of like climbing a mountain. If you want to successfully reach...
Okay, so what's happening now is that he's finished the 7-step roadmap, and he's transitioning to the pitch of the product.
Reach the top of the mountain, you need 2 things. A map to show you how to get there, and a safety net that prevents you from falling through the cracks. And you need these because 2 things will inevitably happen. You get lost in the way and you'll fall. But if you have a map, you will always find a way back to the trail. And if you have safety nets, even if you fall down, you will always get back up safely. Now, what I just delivered to you is a tiny part of the map. Now it's time for me to give you the full map.
I argue with a lot of people about what I'm about to say next. Money is not something you earn.
Unfortunately, I can't record and upload a 25-hour-long YouTube video going through exactly how to start this process, going over every detail of starting an online business from scratch. But luckily, as I mentioned to you earlier, I have one of the world's leading e-learning platforms, Grow Your Agency. And inside of this platform, I have my flagship program. It's called Agency Navigator.
And
Agency Navigator is...
And by the time that you get to this stage, Agency Navigator is no surprise because there have been those soft mentions of it throughout the video. And, you know, it's usually at around this stage where the pitch begins that VSLs have just a massive drop-off in viewership. And one of the mechanisms that Iman used to prevent that or mitigate that is by having soft introductions of the program earlier on.
Complete map you need in order to start a location-independent business from zero and scale it to $10,000 a month.
Notice the change in music and the sort of the, you know, aspirational tone to it. It's
the shortest time frame.
It does definitely play a role on the emotions that a viewer is feeling, and that's why I prefer VSLs over sales letters any day of the week, because in a video you can communicate with your audience across just so many different dimensions. There's sound, there's your tone of voice, there's your visuals, there's just so much more.
Impossible by selling services online, even if you have no previous experience. And this map is composed of 3 parts. The first one is the foundations part. And here you basically learn how to set everything up. That is, how to choose a service to offer, how to choose a niche.
Okay, basically he's about to explain what the program includes, so let's just fast forward.
This stage we go in depth on the best practices of service delivery and teach you step by step how to master the service that I consider to be the most profitable and scalable one, which is paid ads. And after this stage, you'll become a master at getting killer results for your clients through paid advertising, even if you have never programs is because of the safety net. We notice the majority of students fail because they fall through the cracks. They get stuck choosing a niche, or they choose the wrong service, or they don't send enough outreach messages. So we create the safety nets to avoid you from falling through these cracks. And we have 3 levels of safety nets to avoid that from happening. The first safety net is our
So he's using the whole map and safety net analogy to help him explain the program, and just yet another way that he makes things more straightforward and less overwhelming, because across the last 42 minutes or something, the person would have been exposed to a lot of new information. So it's very key to organize this information in a digestible way. And it's very, when you actually get to the pitch, it's very, very crucial. I mean, I wouldn't make that much commentary about the pitch because I think it's relatively straightforward. But the key really is to ensure that you give clear indications as to what's provided and how exactly this will be responsible in your transformation. This is what you need to do, because ultimately a person only buys if they're confident, right? And a person can get confidence from a variety of sources, right? One of the sources is the person that is presenting, right? So Iman, of course, the confidence arising from there is very high because of the social proof that he has, because of the testimonials that he's presented, because of the professionalism of the video and so on. Another source of confidence is yourself as a prospect, because you need to have faith in yourself to be able to benefit from the product. And sort of the last source of confidence that exists is the offer, right? So the offer, as you'll see later, he has a refund guarantee. So I think if you join the program and you decide that it's not for you, you can actually claim a refund, which in this case is an absolute no-brainer offer, right? Because it completely squashes any kind of reservations you could have had about the validity of the program and the quality of contents inside, because you can literally just go in, see the contents, decide that it's not for you, and come back, right? So you get sort of various pools of confidence, and in order for a person to be confident, they need to be clear on what is going to happen, and clarity is the enabler of confidence. And that's why in the pitch it's very important to inject this clarity.
community. Inside the community, you're going to find people starting at the same time as you, from the same level as you, and you'll get to share your journey together. It's extremely important to have people walking this journey alongside you, especially when times get tough, because it stops it from being you against the world to us against the world. And inside the community, you're also going to find other students who are farther ahead of you in their journey and who can help you with your problems because they have walked the same path before. And I'm very proud to say that inside of Agency Navigator, you're going to find a level of community you are simply not going to find anywhere else. Inside of it, you're going to meet people like Marcus, who scaled his agency to $3,000 a month profit. Girls like Ellen, who's still in high school and already has 17 clients on retainer 3 months after starting outreach. Or guys like Nick, who went from 0 to 10 clients in a month period and managed to get his own place in downtown Nashville at the age of 18. And this leads into our second, our expert team of coaches. I say this because the apartment that Nick got, well, that's the exact same apartment that John Danes, who's one of our coaches, lives in. You see, John is the owner of 2 very successful lead generation agencies and is currently one of the coaches that helps students with agency operations, sales, and service delivery. So here's how the coaching calls work.
So yeah, just another reminder that he's been able to show testimonials, and the reason that he's been able to show testimonials is because the underlying product has helped real people get real results, right? So once again, focus on the fundamentals of building a good product, and from there, you'll have the foundation to enable all of your subsequent activities, such as marketing, right? Marketing becomes infinitely harder when you don't have any real proof that what you're pitching works.
A week, we have multiple live coaching calls on sales, service delivery, outreach, mindset, and accountability. I mean, you can literally jump on these calls, unmute yourself, and ask one of our expert coaches whatever you want. And here's what happens when you go into the coaching calls: ask good questions and apply what they teach you. You got his first client at $2,500 a month after applying what Luis, one of our coaches, told him to do in one of their Q&A calls. And look what happened just 2 days after. He closed another client at $6,000 a month. I mean, he went from 0 to $8,500 a month in simply a matter of 3 days. And what I'm most proud of is that every single one of our coaches have gone through our courses as students, just like you, and have made hundreds of thousands of dollars a year from their agencies. Having these coaches as your safety net, ready to answer any of your that fall through the safety net, and that is our dedicated one-on-one your journey, and to provide you with the most insane level of mentorship.
So as you're watching this pitch, you get a very, very clear indication of exactly what will happen. Very important.
You can find in any online program. You're going to have a kickoff call with your dedicated coach right away when you join the program, followed by a 1-month check-in call, a 3-month check-in call, and a 6-month check-in call to make sure you are accountable and keep you on the right track throughout your journey. To this point, we've had more than 20,000 people to apply to work with us in this specific position, and we've hired less than 15. And we run an application process for this position almost weekly at this point in order to find the best talent out there. I mean, it is literally easier to be accepted into Harvard than it is to get accepted to be a coach to our students. And that's why we call them the Student Success Concierge. This is how serious we take this position and the level of support that you get inside of Agency Navigator. All the time I see student wins where people tag their Student Success Concierge saying how much they helped them along the way. And with this map and safety net, we've taught over 15,000 students to date. Our average student takes around 47 days to sign their first paying client, and the average client retainer of our students is $2,000 a month. And the real beauty is that after they sign their first client, it takes them around half the time to sign their second one. And at this point, they're already making a full-time income. I mean, for any type of degree that provides you this type of compensation, colleges are charging an average of $57,000 a year. For the 5 years it takes to graduate, that would equate to over $250,000 in
Okay, so what I think will happen now is that he's very gently transitioned to explaining what the offer is, right, and pitching that. Now he's going to polarize or contrast this with standard education, standard high school education, and he's presenting specific prices of how much that is. And I assume that what he's about to do is sort of use this figure to anchor how little Agency Navigator costs. So, this is the anchoring effect where you can make the size of a particular price. I think this is like $999 or $1,499, which is a decently large sum, right? Decently sized sum rather. But once you contrast that against, something like 200K, it's absolute peanuts, right? So anchoring is very, very powerful, and you know, he's it's just yet another tool up his sleeve that or trick up his sleeve that Iman is using here.
Invested into your education. Now, from the very second I founded Grow Your Agency 5 years ago, the mission has always been the same: to deliver 10 times the impact on your income for 1/100th the price tag of a regular college education. I mean, our student testimonials already proved that we delivered 10 times the impact on your income. Now, 1/100th the price tag of a regular college education.
Very, very smooth transition to giving the price. Usually it's this exact point of, you know, sharing the price, which is a bit friction. It's quite hard to find transition to, but this one right here is a very, very smooth segue.
Education. The $250,000 we just mentioned would equate to $2,500. But to be completely honest, I still wasn't happy at this price point because I felt it was too out of reach for most people. So if you want to get access to the complete map, which is Agency Navigator, and our 3 levels of safety net, the community, the coaching calls, and the one-on-one dedicated coach, $2,500 is not the price you're going to be paying today. I've decided that when you enroll in Agency Navigator today, rather than $2,500, you're going to be paying a one-time fee of $14.99. And that's not all, because Agency Navigator is going to be moving to a yearly subscription model very soon. That means that for people to get continuous access to programs, the exclusive student community, the coaching calls, the dedicated coach, they will have to pay a yearly fee on top of that of $14.99. And we already have a set date for this to get implemented. So if you want to get...
Okay, so this is another tactic. It's more a direct response tactic that is used in the pitch to inspire action. And that is to set or to create urgency, right? Because, you know, it's a pretty urgent situation, because if I don't buy today, then, you know, this offer won't be on the market anymore. So damn, I better get moving, because a lot of the time people like to, you know, sit on this decision and think and make their mind up. And yeah, it's a sort of very easy excuse for people not making the commitment of going ahead and buying the product, right? So that's where urgency tactics come in. Also, scarcity tactics can be useful. Scarcity is slightly different, where, you know, you say that the position that is being offered or the product that is being offered is scarce. So urgency is time-based, scarcity is quantity-based.
Lifetime access to the exclusive student community, to coaching calls, the dedicated one-on-one coach, as well as the complete Agency Navigator program that will teach you how to build your agency from zero to $10,000 a month in record time. Well, then today is your best bet. And listen, a few days from now, or even next month, this offer may not be available anymore. So just remember, right now at this exact moment, we are living the best moment in history to start your online agency business. There has never before been such a demand for these type of services. That means the more that you wait, the more that
So yeah, last couple of minutes or last couple of seconds now even. So this is you know, where if a person has gone to this stage, they're on the fence really. And what Iman is doing here is just providing those gentle nudge, or maybe not so gentle, but he's providing those nudges to get people across to the other side of the fence. And yeah, to make sure that there's sort of no wastage of the guys that have gotten to this stage.
To procrastinate, there are other people right now that aren't, who are taking your potential clients, who are taking the 4-figure monthly sums that you should be paid because you didn't. You procrastinated, you kicked the can down the road, which by the way is what you did last year and the year before that, and you said, oh, I'll get to it some other time. And by the way, businesses have already included these services in their marketing.
So yeah, it's just like going down a bunch of different angles to create this urgency. You know, you've been procrastinating. You said that you do this last year, and someone else is out there taking these clients. Then another angle that he's using is that businesses have already allocated this budget, so it's just there, you know, waiting, sitting for you to pick it up. So yeah, it's usually to this stage of a sales asset, it does get sort of pretty pushy, and that's because it's trying to prompt for a conversion.
For the year. This means that they're going to spend the money either way. So if you're not the one getting paid these 4-figure monthly sums, that's someone else who's watching this video that did commit to a roadmap. Well, they're getting that money instead. So you can either be the one taking action yourself and getting what's yours, or you can be the one sitting back and watching others succeed. The choice is yours. So if you want to learn how to start a $10,000 a month agency from scratch, click the button below this video and get lifetime access to Agency Navigator. And in case you have any questions that were not answered in this video, or if you're having any problems completing your purchase, you can book a call with one of our student success team and they'll personally help you with your situation. So I want you to know that I'm rooting for you. I'm here to see you succeed, and I'll see you inside of Agency Navigator.
Let me let you.
All right, we've watched enough selling. So that's the VSL. We've gone through the video together, and throughout the video, I've paused to explain the rationale behind why it is the way it is, and why it's been so successful for Iman. I think it's generated over 2 million views. So, you know, I'll leave the maths to you to work out how much potential interest that generated, even taking conservative conversion rates like 1%, for example, which I think, to be honest, this VSL is doing way better than that. So the key in terms of the outtakes of what the VSL really excelled in is smoothness, right? So it has very smooth transitions, and this is what enables points to be made in a very organic manner, right? And when you're speaking in a more organic fashion, you seem less salesy. So that's one thing that the VSL really excelled at. Then another thing is the concept of maximal density, right? So the question isn't how long should my VSL be? The question is what do I need to include in the VSL in order to shift the beliefs and leave the necessary impact to prompt a person to buy, and how could I combine all of these points that I need to mention in the most dense way, right? So that I could convey all of this information in as less time as possible, right? So this is what this VSL did very well, and that's why they chose the structure that they did in terms of 7-step framework to building the best online business model. And this allowed them to explain the agency business model, because of course we're dealing with an unsophisticated audience, but it also allowed them to, you know, knock off alternative or rather competing business models at the same time, and you know, communicate a bunch more. So these are the sort of the key insights out of the VSL. And to be honest, there's plenty of more. I'll sort of leave it to you to maybe go through the video again to note these down, and the ones that you found most useful. I have also got a file where I literally commented or I extracted the transcript, and I've commented on each bit which I thought needed attention. So if you'd like that file, then just pop me a message on Instagram, then I'll leave that link below. I'll send it across to you across DMs. But yeah, that's the script. But don't forget that the thing that does the underlying or the thing that really is responsible for the majority of the results of this VSL are the underlying fundamentals, which are the fact that Iman is in a very big market. He's solving a very big pain of how to acquire financial freedom. He has a legitimate business or businesses that he's able to draw experience from and testimonials from. He has a lot of social proof, right, which of course builds trust. And the VSL itself is hosted on YouTube as well, which minimizes friction in actually getting to see this VSL. So those are the things that are, are really responsible for the majority of the results, and they're the things that they're basically the things that are a script writer's dream, right? Because they just give them so much to work with. So don't forget that it's the underlying factors that really move the needle. And marketing is something that you put on top of that to ensure that you can focus on the product and to ensure that whatever your work or whatever you're doing on the product side translates as well as possible to the front-facing side of the markets, right? That's what marketing is for. But yeah, with that said, I think we've covered it all. It's been a pretty long video. If you're still watching this, then I really do appreciate you. You're committed. Check out my other videos. They, as I said at the start, they are quite different to this one that we've recorded right here. But nonetheless, I think you would enjoy them. And yeah, with that said, I hope you have a good rest of the day. Click that subscribe button to stay in touch, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.